There is a haunting power that has followed men from the beginning, and he will be with us to the end. Smoke billows from his nose. A great fire rages in his belly, ready to lay all things in its path desolate. It rules the skies, the earth, and the water. To understand their power, let us hear from one of the greatest of their kind. My armor is like tenfold shields. My teeth are swords. My claws spears. The shock of my tail a thunderbolt. My wings a hurricane. And my breath death. I speak of the great red dragon. He can be seen all over history. The first to use the red dragon for a symbol were the Welsh kings of Aberfraw in the early parts of the 5th century. They wanted to symbolize their power and authority after the Romans had left. In the 7th century, it became the red dragon of Cadwaladr. Can you imagine being on the fields of ancient Britain and seeing red dragons flying through the air? I can hear the soldiers now. The dragons are coming. One legend is that Romano-British soldiers carried red dragons on their banners to Rome. Geoffrey of Monmouth in his Historia Regum Britannia links the red dragon to King Arthur. Geoffrey describes the prophecy of Merlin, in which there is a great struggle between the Welsh and the English, symbolized by the red dragon for the Welsh and a white dragon for the English. The young Merlin is said to be the one who told the king to dig up the dragons, and when he did, they went to war. The Welsh dragon defeats the white, and the red dragon still waves proud on the flag of Wales today. In China, red dragons fly too. The symbol of different emperors across dynasties were dragons, with the Ming dynasty adopting the red dragon. One of the best representations of the design and aesthetic of these dragons is on antique porcelain. This one displayed by Sotheby's is a prime example. The dragon bears 5 claws, menacing whiskers, and muscular arms. The Chinese are still using the dragon today in a way that I did not expect. The Chinese company Li-Ning has partnered with former NBA legend Dwayne Wade to make the red dragon fly on the basketball court. The shoe is called the Way of Wade Red Dragon. The shoe is a popping red and complete with dragon scales. It even has a story to go along with it. Dragon, the ancient creature holding all great qualities, is a representation of prosperity, power, and hope. Blessed by the red dragon, Dwayne Wade is calling all young players to come after him and create legends by tearing down the opponent's defensive lines and roaring for victory. May the flame burn its brightest. Be the game changer in your own way. Tolkien brought to life another red dragon by the name of Smaug, who was quoted earlier. Smaug invaded the dwarf kingdom of Erebor 171 years before the events in The Hobbit. As we know, 13 dwarves set out with Gandalf and Bilbo to defeat the dragon. Smaug stands out amongst the great red dragons in that he can speak, and does so with sophistication, perhaps due to his age. He is not unique in his love for gold, however, and the riches under the mountain. R.K. Post is an illustrator that is keeping the red dragons in our midst. My first introduction to his work was through the Magic the Gathering set, Urza's Destiny. Covetous dragons and another dragon hoarding gold. The dragon is perched high in the clouds, and he's sitting on a nest of gold. His great claw reaches over the loot as he's ready to bring the treasure in and never let it go. Treasures are man-made, suggesting weak humans had been plundered by the great power of the red dragon. The dragon's muscles bulge, as we've seen before. If Smaug is the king under the mountain, Covetous Dragon is the king on top of the mountain. Covetous Dragon will not be R.K. Post's last dragon. Set in the heavens, amongst the stars and the firmament, is World Gorger Dragon. R.K. Post is the first to take the World Gorger to the furthest extent, with other variations on the card not being as ambitious. This dragon is all-consuming and all-powerful, of a world unknown to us. World Gorger is capable of not only flight in the skies of the world, but through the galaxy. the work gives us the greatest sense of the all-consuming power of the red dragon. In the last book of the Bible, the red dragon makes an appearance again, but perhaps this time in a different form. Revelations reads, "And there appeared another wonder in heaven, and behold, a great red dragon, having 7 heads and 10 horns, and 7 crowns upon his heads. And his tail drew the 3rd part of the stars of heaven, and did cast them to the earth. And the dragon stood before the woman, which is ready to be delivered, for to devour her child as soon as it was born." These are the great watercolor paintings by William Blake, depicting the scene. We are brought to the high heavens, set against the deep hues of space. The red dragon stands over the woman, bearing the child that will one day overthrow him. When I see the great red dragon, I see a bodybuilder spreading their lats, exposing every cut in the muscle. The pose is saying, "Look at me. Look at all my glory and the force I wield." Great wings stretch across the sky, blotting out the heavens. This red dragon is not to be taken lightly. It consumes all the composition, in a similar way that the dragon consumes the space of the entire canvas. At his feet trembles the woman clothed in the sun. Blake continues with the theme. These paintings make part of the theme of one of the great thrillers ever written by the American author Thomas Harris. He titled his work, "The Red Dragon." There are some who see the red dragon with fear. They see the horror and they run. Others instead might idolize and worship the great red dragon. In Thomas Harris's story, a man by the name of Francis Dollarhide commits grand atrocities in his attempts to become or to embody the great power of the red dragon. He lifts weights to build up his muscles to resemble the bulging fibers of Blake's dragon. He tattoos his back to further impersonate his idol. He says to one of his victims, "I am the dragon, and you call me insane. You are privy to a great becoming, but you recognize nothing. To me, you are a slug in the sun. You are an ant in the afterbirth. It is your nature to do one thing correctly. Before me, you rightly tremble. But fear is not what you owe me. You owe me awe." Can a man become a dragon? Not in a physical form. Can a man wield as weapons fear, anger, rage, and horror? Yes. In life we experience opposites, good and evil, right and wrong, truth and lies. There are lessons we can draw from the stories of the great red dragons. Where the great red dragon dominates with fear and terror, it makes way for its opposing forces, faith and courage. Faith and courage is often embodied by much smaller things. I cannot speak of the man, dragon Francis Dollarhide, without speaking of the hero of Thomas Harris's book, William Graham. The story of Graham is the story of all of us, the story of facing that which we fear most and overcoming it. In the Red Dragon film, there is an exchange between Hannibal Lecter, the red-eyed, flesh-eating dragon in his own right, cunning and sophisticated. Will Graham is seeking his help to catch Dollarhide. Hannibal describes Will's courage in a backhanded way. "You stink of fear under that cheap lotion. You stink of fear, Will, but you're not a coward. You fear me, but you still came here. You fear this shy boy, yet still you seek him out. Don't you understand, Will? You caught me because we are very much alike. Without our imaginations, we would be like all those other poor dullards. Fear is the price of our instrument, but I can help you bear it. Lecter observes the very essence of courage. It is not an absence of fear, but having strength to act despite it. Will Graham is able to continually face his fears that bring him closer and closer to finding the red dragon he hunts. And when they do meet, he's able to focus and act. In their final battle, Graham was able to exploit the weakness of Francis Dollarhide and to bring the dragon to its knees. The other dragons in these stories I've told you today are no different. The covetous dragon and Smaug have greed. For Smaug, it is that one spot on his chest that doesn't have a thick scale of protection. Bard from Lake Town becomes aware of this weakness and is able to drive an arrow through the heart of the great red dragon, the king under the mountain. Out of the sky he falls to a less brutal end he has inflicted on his enemies. The red dragon represents the thing you fear the most. It is the Francis Dollarhide, the Smaug, the covetous dragon, or the world gorger dragon. It is the fear that stops you in your tracks and prevents you from moving forward. Remember, the red dragons in your life have their weaknesses, and the ways in which they can be defeated. But if you never look because you are too scared, then you will always cower in fear. The dragon wants you to close your eyes so you can't see him. He knows that if you do, you will see where he is weak. Great is the day a man gains the courage to face his red dragons. I say dragons because there are many you will face. Some will need to be slain with the metaphorical sword, some tamed, and some dragons you may need to ride. Either way, you are the master, not the red dragon. I've been fascinated by a trend I've noticed when illustrators paint dragons. One theme that keeps it reoccurring for illustrators of high fantasy is of one man versus the great dragon. I'll also make mention of the tendency for artists in the dragon space to depict heroic female characters taming the dragon. Here is a montage of artists who've taken this theme and created inspiring images. Illustration and art are great not only for the joy they bring aesthetically and how pleasing they can be to the eye, but we must always remember the lessons they can teach us. Hopefully you can be triumphant and defiant when the red dragon comes to flex his muscles at you. Flex back, because you are always, and always will be, far more powerful than the red dragon.